welcome to Circle of Love. We are working today on nested identities. Ooh, I'm so excited about this project. This project is based on and inspired by the nesting dolls, excuse me, Russian nesting dolls, and how they each kind of live inside of each other. Oh, this one doesn't open, but they live inside of each other. Okay, and I'm going to talk more about that and how we can use that concept as inspiration for our project today. Talk more about that in just a moment, okay? But I do want to show once again the supplies I have with me. I have very, very thick paper. You can see this paper of mine is very long, but you can use whatever width you have. That's totally fine. We use what we have here in Circle of Love. I have some markers. These happen to be acrylic markers. You can use whatever markers you have. I have glue stick, scissors, pencil, and I have some paints. If you're using paints, you might need a brush, some water, and a palette and a napkin. I also have some scrap papers, various ones. You don't need this many. I just had these in a pile already, so I grabbed them. You can see some have patterns and some are solid, okay? All right, here is my example that I shared already in the photo. And what this is showing here are basically various versions of me. So the way that they each look reflect the way that each of my different versions of me are, some of the traits, some of the personalities of them. And again, I'll talk more about that as we go. But for right now, just want you to see how this works. So it could either be an accordion if you like. And so you really start by seeing the very first one, the largest one, or they fold like this and like this and like this, almost like a kind of a bundle like this, all up into each other. Okay. So logistically and functionally, that's how our structure will work. Okay. So to begin, the first thing to do will be to take your paper that you have, your thick paper, and fold it in half. I'm folding mine this way. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to establish the segments. So that would be these segments, like this one segment for each of our identities. And so on that piece of paper here in my example, the width of the paper really allowed me to get 4 segments out of it. But the number of segments that you use will either be determined by the width of your paper or by just how you cut your paper, okay? That'll make more sense as we go. So I folded my paper in half one time. So I'm going to invite you to fold it in half a second time. Okay. And if you're working with really thick paper like I am, I'm using watercolor paper, then you just really have to be really powerful with your creases like that, or you can use the handle of your scissors. Okay, I'm going to do that with mine. And I'm going to go ahead and fold one more time. And you might find that this is really difficult if you're using really thick paper. So just do the best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect. We are not looking for perfection. You'll get the chance to fix it up in just a moment. Okay, so this just gives us a general guideline. As you can see, mine's so thick, I really can't get a very fine crease. That's okay. We don't need that yet. Okay. All right, so you may have only been able to fold twice in half based on the width of your paper. That's fine. At this point, you're going to open up your paper. And wow, I sure have ended up with many segments in mine because I started out with a super wide paper. So I can decide, do I want that many segments or not want that many segments? Okay. It's okay if you don't want that many segments. You'll get the chance to just trim off what you don't need. But for right now, we first have to make sure that that each of our folds will allow us to fold in the direction we want. So remember in my example, where I said that you could use an accordion fold like this, which is super simple. or you can fold into each other. So that one folds into that one, this one folds into this one, and this one folds into that one. Personally, I kind of like that method, but I tend to display it in an accordion style. So I just like to have both. I like to have choices. If you want to fold into each other, it's time then to take each segment and refold it like this, using the same crease, but your crease might just need to be adjusted a tiny bit. You're going to fold first like this and then go ahead and fold again. Almost like a roll, but not a roll. Okay, it's a flat fold roll. You just keep going like this, so you're kind of retraining your creases to be able to fit inside of each other. Notice they'll stay about in the same spot, but they'll just kind of want to fold into each other. Just keep going. Okay, retraining your creases. Retraining them. You might have to lift and you might have to kind of do a little forcing here. And once I did that, I noticed that, see here, my crease moved over a lot here on this last one. Okay. There. Now, I also feel like I have too many, so I'm going to be strategic about this. On this one that the crease ended up moving a lot, I'm just going to trim that off. As a matter of fact, I might even trim off one additional segment. I'm going to go this far. I'm going to trim this one off. There. Yes, I have many selves, and I don't want to get overwhelmed by this project. So I'm going to just give myself a more manageable amount. There we go. Okay. All right. It's time to start shaping each of our segments. And what I mean by that will be to create this kind of a rounded top area. I'm going to use a rounded area like this. You can use whatever shape you want at any point during any of these projects in Circle of Love. You're always welcome to create your own style, use your own interpretation. My ideas are simply a starting point for you. Okay, so I'm going to actually, speaking of starting point, I'm going to start here with the first segment. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to generally with my pencil sketch like this, a rounded top. So notice how I'm staying within. Let me bend it so you can see it. Within the edges or the width of my first segment. And I'm just going to draw this kind of almost like a rainbow shape there towards the top. Okay. And we could get fancy and we could come and we could add a little bit of a silhouette to it down here. Okay. Maybe I'm going to try that. And where I'm going to try to put my silhouette curve about right here, a little bit higher up. Okay, let me show you what I mean by that. So here in my example, I did put a slight curve here for a silhouette. It's kind of hard to tell because of this patterned paper, but there is a slight silhouette curve right here. Okay, and it's higher up because this is a taller section. In the next one where I added that silhouette, I added it just slightly lower than the previous one. And then the next one, the silhouette curve is just a little bit lower and a little bit lower. Okay. And that's because each of the sections do get shorter and shorter, just to give that feeling of the nesting scenario. But if you want them to be all the same height, absolutely go for it. Okay. So here goes. I'm going to do a little silhouette curve on this side. I'm going to do a little silhouette curve on this side. And you don't need, if the silhouette thing is confusing you, just ignore it. You don't need it. Focus more on this top part and the shape of that. Okay, so we're going to go to the next segment, and notice we're going to draw our top curve like this, just a little bit lower than that first one was. So height wise, this is the tallest one, and this one's a little bit shorter now. Okay. Excellent. And I'm going to go ahead and add a little silhouette curve in here, a little silhouette curve in here. So right now, this is what it's looking like. It kind of looks like it doesn't make sense when they're next to each other like that. But later when we begin cutting, it'll make more sense. Okay. And so I'm going to continue that with the rest of these sections, just continuing making each one a little bit shorter. And notice that I'm not being too careful about my lines. They're more sketchy. They're very sketchy, I should say. Okay, and that's okay, because we're going to be cutting and we're going to be covering. So we don't need to be picky or perfect. So the point right now is really just to get to the next step. Okay, I'm going to sketch this one here. Add a little silhouette. They're so cute already. It's like a little family of its own. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to add the last one. There we go. Maybe give it a little silhouette there, a little silhouette, a little curve there. Okay. So this is what mine look like before I begin cutting. All right. When I begin cutting, I'm simply coming and cutting right on those pencil lines. So I cut that little curve off of there. I'm going to put my hand so you can see the curve. See, I cut that little curve right off of that edge. I'm coming around here. I'm going to go ahead and cut along the top. That would be kind of the head area. I'm going to continue on down here and I'm going to cut into this curve and stop right there. Okay. So I cut into the curve and I just stop right there. I don't want to continue down here because that's the part that's holding everything together. Okay. Just stop right about there. All right. And now I'm going to go and trim this next one. So I come in here, I do the little curve. And here's where you might have to like keep moving your paper around to get a better angle to do the cutting. So it takes a little problem solving. You know, all of these are ways that we are practicing our creativity. And every tiny bit counts. Notice that when I cut this curve on this first one, it naturally now leaves this curve sticking out of this next one here. So I'm just going to trim that off like this in a straight, like that. Okay. So that this ends up straight on this one. So it doesn't interfere and doesn't get in the way when I need to fold this. There's nothing like sticking out and possibly overlapping there or getting caught. So I'm going to continue trimming. And again, if you have figured out a different way you prefer to do this, go for it. Absolutely. Use your own ideas. If you have ideas of your own that are coming to you and you are excited about those ideas, use your own ideas. Okay. This is really the trickiest part. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Now I'm doing the top edge of this one, and they don't need to be perfect curves, and they don't need to be perfectly, let's see, in ratio with each other or even relationship with each other with the next section. This just needs to be a general outline because we're going to be applying a lot of other things on top to really give it more detail and be more specific with it. So there's no need for any particular, there we go, there, particular formula right now, other than sections that either fold like this, like this, like this, and like this into each other. Or maybe they instead accordion fold, okay? And that maybe they're start off like with a larger section and end up with a smaller, shorter one, or not. Or maybe they're all the same, okay? Or maybe they go tall, they start tall, they get short, and then they go tall again. Your choice. You get to decide all of those things. Okay, I'm now going, now that I have all of my main parts here, I'm going to call them now my selves, the foundations of my selves established. I'm going to start thinking about what are the different identities that live within me. And I say this because identities can show up in a variety of ways. Identities can, and I'm going to actually now change my view, my camera view. So bear with me 1 second. I want to make this bigger. I hope this is helpful. So identities can be shown or displayed outwardly, maybe by the way that we dress, by the way that we have our hair, by the color of clothes that we choose. Identities can also be the way that we feel, maybe even in different situations, in different environments, maybe even with different people. Okay. And also identities can be like our almost ways that we wish to be, hope to be, want to be, our ideals, our aspirations. Those are some ways that we can have identities, the things that we either already possess or things that we tend to reach for, strive for, be inspired by, react to in an excited way, that kind of thing. Okay, so to give you an idea, I decided to start here with the largest one being my outward identity, the one that I feel like I display and I really look like most of the time towards other people. So when I went in, I drew my face. You can see here, I would say this is a pretty basic, kind of almost like a cartoon outline of my face. This is kind of how, when I look in the mirror, just what I see objectively without any interpretation, without any opinions, without any judgments. This is just kind of my basic me, I call it. And I am really drawn towards black and white motifs in my clothing. I tend to wear a lot of black and kind of keep it more plain. Not always, but that's just my tendency on the outside. But I also have this really, really fun kind of whimsical interest. And I don't tend to dress that way often, or maybe even ever, but I dream about dressing that way. And I, I've I've recently started making more of an effort to seek opportunities to really represent myself outwardly more this way that I often feel inwardly. Okay, so kind of yeah, just whimsical and kind of maybe even mismatchy. I don't know. We'll see. This is kind of a more of a mystical kind of feeling that I often experience. This tends to be the feeling I have maybe when I'm creating my art on my own and I'm by myself and I've got my music going and I'm just going with the flow. It's almost this like not whimsical, but like mystical is what I was trying to say. A mystical world where there's just colors floating all over and there's no real up or down and there's no real logic. And it's just a fun feeling, a fun, colorful feeling. And then this is like my baby me. This is what came out as I was meditating during this project of what's my core me? What was I like when I was little? What did I like when I was a child? What do I remember being my feeling, my perspective when I was really little? And I remember then, even as a very young child, as long as I can remember, I always wanted to be an artist. Art was always in me. And so here, what I did is I just used the color of paper that I had already chosen. And it happened that I accidentally dropped a drop of paint on this paper when I was working on it. And then I just went with it. And so that was the process of me following the same attitude I had when I was a child, of being able to just go along with whatever was happening and making something out of it, turning something interesting, turning it into something that was interesting to me. And I really enjoyed that time of my life. It was a really special time for me because I feel like I was really uninhibited and And then I went off to school and I then had, I learned a bunch of like formalities about art and things like that. And then I started to get self-conscious. So that started to now inhibit my work at times. So this was for me just kind of, again, a very fun, very innocent, pure, raw me as a child, and here as the baby of this little set of beings, of identities. Okay, so there we go. That gives you some ideas just conceptually to start thinking about. And now that hopefully you've had an idea to begin making your own connections that way, it's time to get your papers and start looking at the base papers that you might need. The base, when I say base, I mean the big area that will cover most of each of your beings. Now, you could take this project, and work on this project for days and weeks and months and years and add lots and lots of different patterns and different papers and really go to town collaging each one of these with a whole variety of pieces. For today's activity, I encourage you to make a decision and move on quickly, because it helps us to really get to the core of this of the subject here, which is you, which is developing the ideas behind each of your different identities. Later, you could also go back and you can add more to it. So when I say the base layer for each identity, you're looking at, when you pick up a paper, does it represent one of those people that you've envisioned? Like this one for me, and you heard me talk about, let me bring this example back. You heard me talk about this being a mystical feeling rather than a visual, like a visual representation. Okay, this is more of the feeling that I kind of, dive into at times while I'm creating. When I look at this paper, it also starts to give me that feeling. So I might set this one aside for that. This one also gives me that feeling, so I might kind of use those maybe even in combination. And so I'm going to go in through and just pick a couple of others. Let's see. Oh yeah, I talked about that whimsical me that I aim to be on the outside. I would, I'm someone who won't ever color my hair, but I dream of coloring my hair. And I often wonder, should I color my hair if I have such intense dreams about coloring my hair? I don't know yet. I haven't decided that yet. But if I did, that would be really super fun. And so it's kind of like a, just again, meditating on it. You don't have to make any decisions about it. So this is going to represent that being for me. All right. Now I have a couple that I've chosen. Actually, this might be also, I might use this one as a representation of that. I really like that one. Oh yeah, it's big and bold. I like that one. Yeah, big and bold. That's how I would describe that being, big and bold. So I'm going to show you how to go about creating the shape out of your patterned paper that will then get glued to fill your each individual shape of your beings here. What you simply do is take just one of the sections and make one of the sections fit onto your pattern paper. Here you can see that this being is fitting completely inside the edge here of my pattern paper, right? And it goes around here and it's fitting on and it's fitting on there. And it's also fitting on down here at the edge. So notice I'm lining it up on the edge here. And I'm lining it up on the edge here so I don't waste too much of the middle of this paper. And this is where you take your pencil and you trace again that curve. Remember that silhouette curve that we drew before? Trace that. Go ahead and trace the top area of the head. That other little silhouette curve, trace that. This edge down here, trace that. And if you have any additional paper that is exposed over here, you could trace that as well. Okay. Now, see if you, yep, you can kind of see my pencil. There we go. See my pencil line where I drew. Now I'm just going to cut right out. Okay, cut that right out. I love the sound of cutting sometimes. Yes. Okay, now this should fit pretty closely there onto your first being. If you find that you have a little bit of overhang here, then you can just trim that. Just give it a little trim. Okay, these parts, all of these steps that we're taking right now are really gonna be the least important. Okay, and when I say that, I mean least important in terms of the entire effect of your entire project. So if you're someone who's worried that it doesn't fit perfectly, don't worry about it right now. You can focus on those technicalities more when we begin adding faces and things like that. So that's really going to be where you want to spend most of your energy. Okay. And so I would take, here's where I would take my glue stick. And, or if you're using any other type of glue, you can do that. Also, here's where sometimes I put a scrap paper. I like to use copy paper sometimes as my scrap paper. There we go. So I can glue freely and not worry about my work surface getting all sticky. There we go. And you're just going to go ahead and place that right on top of where that belongs. Okay. There we go. Now notice that this time I started with the mystical me. Okay. And this is something that you can do intentionally, or you don't have to. You can just begin and just start. But this time I started with mystical me because when I started with the me here that I feel like, or the what did I call it? The outward me, the me that or basic me is what I called it. Basic me that I feel like I show, that people see on the outside when they look at me. I wanted something there to be able to be there before that. I want something that I can emit, that I can, that I can also show before that, almost like a feeling of me before this visual me. Okay, and if that sounds too complicated or confusing, then don't worry about it. It's just me being way conceptual right now. So this mystical me is, and notice that I also gave myself an extra being here, okay? Because the other one had only 4, this one now has 5. I am going to put an additional mystical me here because this I feel like is actually what connects me to the world around me. Yes, this might be how I show up or how I look in the world, but this one is going to be how I connect, how I relate, how I interact with the world around me. Okay. All right. So I'm just going to leave that there. I'm not going to worry about the face yet. And I'm going to move on. And let's see here. Oh, and I think I want to put bold me actually really, yeah, right next door to that. Yeah. Because I'm trying to build some more boldness into my life. So again, I'm just lining up this right here and along the edge of this pattern paper. And I'm going to take my pencil, outline that there. And even though I can't see where this line would continue, I'm just going to estimate. There. I'm going to imagine it. Okay. And bring it and continue bringing it down further. Okay. And let's go ahead and trim this. So here is where you can begin to in a sense, plan out or design or better dictate parts of you that do show up that maybe you feel like aren't showing up enough. And here you can make them show up more. And it's almost like the paper doll process. You know, we're dressing ourselves up, our many selves, in all the different ways, either that we already are or that we want to be or wish to be. And by doing this on paper, it actually does transfer into our bodies, into our cells in ways that then later help us manifest these ideas into our real life. I don't know the science behind it, but I do know that it works. Okay. Now I'm going to apply this second being, my bold being, right there, right next door. Yes, I've got my mystical me, I've got my bold me. And I'm going to continue this process with the rest of these beings in just a moment. But right now, what I want to do for anyone who's watching on video is I want to go ahead and begin adding the face so you can get a sense of how that process works. Remember earlier that I said that I might use these two papers in combination? Even though this one does have these little tiny specks on here, it's not totally solid. I like that. I'm going to use that. And so I'm just going to cut myself a little piece. Your face area does not have to be made up of totally, completely plain paper. Let me show you here, for example, on this one also I used this paper that has a variety of color, which was actually a piece of this paper. Plus, I liked the idea that a piece of my mystical me here was in my baby me here. Okay, so be thinking about those connections always. You can build meaning really into everything. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and trim just estimate a size and trim a oval-like shape. You could do a circle, you could do a square, you could do a triangle, you could do whatever shape you want. I'm gonna stick with the oval. I like the shape of the oval. And I'm gonna go add glue to the back. There we go. And I'm gonna put it here. And the face color does not have to stand out totally. Like in some cases, it might blend in like this one does. Remember, this is my mystical me. So I like to also think of it that I don't have boundaries here in my mystical me. When I say boundaries, I mean defined limits. That's what I'm trying to say. There are no limits here. So everything just kind of merges in and out of each other. I like that. My bold me, ooh, yes, I gotta think of the color for my bold me. Now I do have a lot of boldness already in the body here. So I think what I'm gonna do is go with this more subdued color for the face. And it reminds me of how my basic me is more subdued. And so this is like my basic me face, or being represented by this subdued color face, dressed up in this bold, there we go, in these bold colors. Yes. And so as I'm doing that, I'm imagining myself in real life. Actually, what would that be like? Taking that journey mentally, walking those steps in my mind, getting a little bit closer, maybe, to one day being bold enough to be that bold me that I have on the inside. Let it be the bold me that I look like also on the outside. Okay, and now that once you've gotten your faces glued down, You can take time. Remember, we've got our markers. We also have our paint that we could use. It might not be, your paper might already have so much pattern and color and texture that you don't really need to add a lot more to that. And really, it just needs a little definition. So to show you what I mean by definition is here, I added a dark line under the chin area, just to kind of help that stand out a little bit more. Here, I actually outlined and I added facial features. And this one has the hair only, and this one has the face only. And then here was, using marker, just absolute outline drawing. Okay, so, but you can depict those in any way. It doesn't have to be an actual, drawing of a face. It could be anything, whatever makes sense to you, whatever feels right to you, however it looks to you is fine. So let's see. I think I'm going to, for my bold me, I'm thinking about the hair area. What would that hair be like if it was bold me? And it could be something that I simply draw on, or here is where it could be something that I add on. What if I did have some kind of fun colored hair? I like that idea. I like the idea that I'm using, again, this little piece from my mystical me, okay? Because somewhere in my bold me also lives mystical me. There we go. And I'm going to just kind of put it a little slant there. And I'm not, remember, look how I'm not really putting a ton of thought. I'm not ruminating on, what hairstyle would I have necessarily, or, is it exactly how my hairstyle would be? Those kinds of details might not need to be figured out right now. Okay. If instead you are someone who has a hard time making decisions, then maybe instead your focus needs to be more about about just making a decision any which way and then moving to the next step. I've just used this little kind of almost like an S shape to create eyebrow, nose. I'm going to do a little eyes like this. Cute little eyes, just keep it simple right now. And I think I'm going to add red lipstick for the lips, because when I think about wearing red lipstick, I think, well, that is very bold. For me, that would be very bold. That would be super bold. So now I have little red lips there. Okay. And I might continue on, again, designing the rest of me. Here, you can see I've added some additional features here in the body area with my marker. And here you can see I've also gone in and drawn additional little designs in with my marker as well. This one I showed you, I added all these dots and things like that. Whatever it is that makes sense to you, that helps you really illustrate and achieve that feel and that look that you're going for each of your identities. That's what you should do, okay? And you get to choose what that will be. All right, I am going to take a break from my project for those of you who are watching by video. And let me show you, there we go, show you my face there. If you're watching by video, I want to thank you so much for trying out this project and for taking time to think about yourself and your many selves. And maybe see if you can find some of the traits that you're seeking, that you're still looking for in your life, actually already living in you somewhere, somehow, from maybe some past time or some past version of yourself. And so I hope that you do discover some really, really neat parts of you, and that you are able to use this as an inspiration moving forward in your life. Okay. Thank you so much again. And I hope that you get to join us next month for Circle of Love. All right. I'm sending you always lots of love. Okay. And again, be well. All right. There. I'm going to stop